Okay, somebody called. Sorry about that. It's annoying. Somebody called while I'm doing this video. And it appears on the screen, and hopefully I'll be able to merge these two parts together. There was a voicemail, and I accidentally pressed now, and then it stopped recording. So hopefully I can merge the two together. But I, I'll return to that thing about Nero, the Caesar Nero dynasty. So Nero's general Vespasian is campaigning, trying to enter Jerusalem, trying to get to the Second Temple. And when Nero dies, he goes back to Rome and leaves, I believe, his son, Titus, in charge to continue the campaign. And I'll touch on this in a future video. This was literally a world history changing event. Factors very much into Christianity, from my speculation and from what I've read. So Vespasian didn't have any claim because he wasn't the son. He wasn't in that dynasty of Caesar to Nero. So from Caesar to Nero, his bloodlines weren't part of that. So as similar to Egyptian Pharaoh history, he had to campaign that he was the new emperor, and he had to get the Senate to recognize and ratify that he was divine. And that again touches into this video I'm going to talk about further in another video. I'm going to make it upcoming. Anyway, so there's a characterization of the Nero rule and the ones before that as being corrupt and so forth. So he's going to clean that up. Anyway, so back to the term Messiah. So at this point, this is about when the Dead Sea Scrolls, as I remember, the Dead Sea Scrolls would have been written about this time, may have been written about this time, is the era. And the Jews were really hoping that there would be a Messiah. This is now like tied in with heavenly religious iconography, and their battle against tyranny is wrapped up in I want to say hyperbole, but not. Maybe hyperbole isn't the right word. It's wrapped up. It's taken on so many dimensions and has so much of a fervor that it's taken on, this fight for sovereignty has taken on divine dimensions or divine extremes. So in that era, that's perhaps when the Dead Sea Scrolls were composed. And not all of them, of course. I mean, there were lots of different scrolls. Some scrolls were copies of biblical books that we have. There are other ones. The ones who buried the scrolls, I'm talking about those, and the copper scroll, and there were some original writings, talking about the teacher of righteousness and was it the teacher of darkness, something like that. So you can see the level of extremity. So they are waiting for a king to free them. And in the Bible, it talks about, later on in the Bible, it talks about a time when the Messiah will come and everybody will know God, and the Jews and the Israelites, who, particularly the 10 tribes who were lost from northern Israel, they would all come back to Israel. That they had spread out. There was a diaspora. They will return to Israel, and everyone would be, including the king, the Messiah, would be obeying all the commandments in the Torah. It basically being an excellent example of a Jew or Israelite, obeying all the commandments, being a great example. There's no sense of divinity in terms of divine bloodline. There's none of that. That's when Christianity came in and changed it. So I'll get into that in another video. Anyway, I wanted to talk about the Jewish concept of Messiah as opposed to the Christian concept of Messiah. It's very different. All right, so this equidistant letter sequence. Oh, so I was talking about the division of the Jewish Bible into the three parts. It's the Bible itself is called the Tanakh, which is an acronym for Torah, Nevi'im, and Kotuvim. Literally, Torah, which would be teachings or the 5 books, and then Nevi'im, which would be the prophets, and the Kotuvim, which would be the writings. So I want to return to this diagram. Now, you remember the 7 and 49. Why 7 letters and why 49 letters? Skip pattern. Right here. The 7 days of creation, including the Sabbath. 7 is a mystical number. And not only do you have 7 days in a week, and then resting in the final day of the 7th week, but you have 7 years. I believe it's the 7 years where the 7 years where you let the land lay fallow. You give it a rest, and then there's a correlation which I'll get into further about how that correlates directly. And you can find it in Chaver, the website, CHAVER.com, how that correlates with cutting of the hair, letting the sideburns grow down, letting the land lay fallow. And then there's a Jubilee. I believe that's the 49 years. It's unclear, the way the text appears in the Bible, it's unclear whether it's the 50th year or the 49th year. But 7 times 7 equals 49. There's a Jubilee period where you let the your servants, go free, and there's stipulations about that. You let all the debts vanish. So that helps in terms of a timetable. You don't want to, I like it because this is one of the biblical commandments. You don't overextend your expenses. You don't want to spend any money longer than that 49 letter, or 49, maybe it's 49 year span. I'm perhaps confusing the 7 year span with the 49 year span. But anyway, you can see the 49 letter skip pattern makes a lot of sense, and it could have been intentional. Now, I mentioned the Chiasms. You have 5 books. Genesis at the beginning with that 49 letter skip pattern, spelling out Torah at the beginning, and then the same with the beginning of Exodus. Then I skipped over Leviticus, and then Numbers has Torah at the beginning spelled backwards at a 49 letter skip pattern, and then Deuteronomy at the beginning has Torah spelled backwards at a 48 letter skip pattern. Well, Leviticus at its beginning, has Yud He Vav He at a 7 letter skip pattern. As I mentioned before, there are 2 primary names, 2 primary terms for God, or names for God. One is Yud He Vav He, and the other is Elohim. And I'll get into that in another video, why there are 2 names. I'm confident it's not the reason that the documentary hypothesis suggested it is, which is that there are 2 different writers or 2 different writing traditions, and the texts were woven together to create one Bible. It's not that. There's an underlying, deep, fascinating, mystical reason why it's Yud He Vav He and Elohim. I'll get into it a little bit after I mention this, but you can perhaps see the chiasmus. You have Torah in these two books spelled going in one direction, and then Torah spelled different, in reverse in these two books. And then here in the middle, that would be the chi, which would be the X. Remember the chiasmus literary structure, writing structure that was in Greek literature, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was in Babylonian structure, story structure, and so forth. I wonder if it's in like Beowulf or something like that. So the two names, they are used. The only time that they appear as one is in the garden story, in the Eden story, which is the second creation story in the beginning, in the beginning of Genesis, and there are distinctions between Yud He Vav He and Elohim. However, in this one story, you can't see it in the English translation, but it's very clear. It's Yud He Vav. It's 4 letters: Yud He Vav He, and then after that Elohim. It might say the Lord God or something in the English, which totally confuses and loses everybody. That's not reading the Hebrew. That's the only time in which you see them together as one entity. The entity walks through the garden and so forth. And the story interacts with Adam and Eve and so forth. Well, in that story, you have several examples of division and separation. You have, in fact, that could relate, maybe intentionally relate to the first column that I talked about before in the previous chapter in Genesis 1, where you have something new being revealed from the other thing dividing out, like the light was separated from the darkness, and then the upper waters and lower waters were separated and so forth. Well, maybe that was intentional. And here you have this story. You have Chava or Eve. Chava meaning living or life. You have Eve being separated from the Adam, and you have eventually Adam and Eve being separated from the garden. And you could also have that act separating Yud He Vav He Elohim, so that from then on, and also the previous chapter in Elohim, in chapter 1, you have either Elohim being mentioned or Yud He Vav He being mentioned. But they have very different characteristics. This is all touched upon, this is all illuminated in the book and the articles in chaver.com, CHAVER.com, by Mel Klein, or Moshe Klein. Yud He Vav He is concerned with the mind, or the /heart. It's where essentially the ancients believed that the mind dwelt was in the heart. The mind is concerned with the mind of the Adam, meaning Adam and his descendants. And he's up in heaven, he smells the burnt offerings wafting up from the burnt offerings from the Israelites, as he commanded the Israelites to do later on in Exodus and so forth, and Leviticus particularly. And meanwhile, Elohim is more concerned with the earth, has more of a connection with the earth. Elohim is the one that commands them to be fruitful and multiply. And that's more involved in physical reproduction, not so much ethics and commandments. So in the whole story, the Yud He Vav He is the one that gives the the famous Ten Commandments, and various other commandments, not dealing with necessarily with physical structure, but dealing with manners and how people behave in certain statutes to follow if you follow the right path. I mean, in order to follow a good, healthy path. So in that, I'll mention a few examples where both names are mentioned, and the documentary hypothesis followers have pointed to this as being evidence that there were two different stories. No, 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 no. In the flood story, Elohim says, take two of every animal, male and female. Again, reproduction, focus on reproduction, nothing to do with ethics. And Noah is to do that, take two of every animal, male and female, and put them in the ark. And then Yud He Vav He says, take 7 of every clean animal, put them in the ark. It's not that there were two different stories. It's that they're two different entities. I'm not saying that God is really two different entities. I'm saying I'm guessing that the whole point of this seeming separation into two entities is that Garden of Eden story, that event, caused us to see. There goes the phone. Caused the Adam and Eve's eyes to become open, and they it's annoying as heck. And then somebody's going to comment so forth. I'm used to people nitpicking little things that have nothing to do with what I'm talking about. But anyway, my impression is that their eyes opened, and then they didn't see God as a singular entity. They saw God as being kind of two separate parts of God, and they couldn't see how they both unified as one. So I see that as one of the implications or aftermath effects of the Garden of Eden story, and as being one of the implied notions of following in these commandments, you will hopefully see God again unified as one. In fact, there's a phrase, in that day God shall be one and your name shall be one. And I remember as a child chanting it, so forth. And it's part of the service, at least in the temple I go to, it's chanted. Bayom Ha'u, in that day he will be one. Anyway, so there's that story, the flood story, and it's interesting that the creation story, Genesis chapter 1, involves Elohim, and there are writings by ancient scholarly Jews, traditional Jews, who explain how you could read Yud He Vav He into that Elohim phrase, and I forget exactly how. It's very clearly, it refers to Elohim, it uses Elohim, but their explanations provide a way that you could see Yud He Vav He in that. Anyway, it's interesting that there are the 7 days of creation there, as I mentioned earlier, and then those are a reversal of the 10 plagues that are brought forward by Yud He Vav He. And I might as well mention it here. I didn't draw the chart of the the 10 plagues, but you can go to chaver.com and you can see how it's an exact reversal. The light coming forth from the darkness, you see again in the darkness as one of the plagues. It's a reversal. It's in reverse order, and it's in a 3. Whereas that creation was in 2 columns. This is in 3 columns, and there are specific motions by Moses. There's specific references, like it comes from the air or it comes from the land and so forth, that indicates where you should arrange, if you're writing a chart on a piece of paper, if you're arranging the plagues in order, those are cues as to which part of the diagram you're writing. Oh, I see, now we're at the bottom row and this plague fits here. Then, okay, now we're in the middle row. Okay, now we're at the top row. Now we're back down at the bottom row. And the way he spreads his hands over the land or up in the sky, he's pointing toward where the where you should focus, where the unit fits in the diagram of the 10 plagues. So it's interesting that Elohim, one side of God, creates things, and then the other side of God, Yud He Vav He, destroys and turns asunder Egypt. And he says, Yud He Vav He says, no, 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 no. And this is something that's badly misunderstood by readers and atheists and so forth. They Yud He Vav He says, and it's even missed by probably many Jewish readers. Yud He Vav He says, first of all, he says he will harden Pharaoh's heart so that the Israelites will know that I am Yud He Vav He. I believe he might have also mentioned the commandments hadn't been given yet. So, but will know that I am Yud He Vav He, and they will tell their children. So he hardens Pharaoh's heart, and then at some point, Pharaoh relinquishes. All right, fine, the Israelites can escape, and then Yud He Vav He again hardens Pharaoh's heart. He says so many words, I have to harden Pharaoh's heart. I have to keep his heart hardened so that the Israelites will see my signs, all my signs. Well, this diagram of 3 columns and the other one's 2 columns in Genesis chapter 1, and in the 10 Commandments later on, they follow a system that's, I can't go into detail here, but because I don't have all these charts, I'm sick and so forth. But a crude explanation is they follow like a pattern of 3 zones. There's the top or divine, there's the bottom, which is the land and mundane, and then there's the intermediary. And that's shown, that's the proper arrangement of the 10 plagues. That's the proper arrangement of the 7 days of creation. And that's the proper arrangement of the 10 Commandments. And you don't have to do any fancy rearranging of units. You just have to know when the cues are to begin a new column and a new row and so forth. So I see that as, it's very clear, as being very clear. Yud He Vav He, in essence, is saying, no, 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 no. I want the Israelites, my people, the Israelites, to clearly see this arrangement, this fundamental diagram, and I want to knock them over the head. I want to make it clear, very clear. So I will harden Pharaoh's heart to prevent him from interrupting my delivery of all these plagues, because those plagues are given in a precise order. They are there to, in a precise order, precise arrangement, so that it's very clear what this fundamental structure is. And so that the Israelites will know that I am Yud He Vav He, and there's further explanation I'd go into in another video as to why he says, so that they will know that I am Yud He. It's not a matter of him being a megalomaniac or something, or that I'm king or something. He doesn't say so that I'm king, or they'll know that I'm the big chief or something. He's not saying that. He's saying so that they will know that I am Yud He Vav He specifically, not the Lord, because at that time, now of course it's lost in modern biblical translations where you have English saying just God or the Lord or whatever. It totally waters it down to the point of hiding it, all this. But in ancient times, there were different deities, and they went by specific names. And you had to know, so that by knowing the name of a deity, you could know specifically who that deity was. So it's again, it's not, he's not saying they will, I must let all 10 signs be shown, 10 plagues be given, be displayed, so that they will know that I am Yud He Vav He. He's not saying so that they'll know I'm the chief, I'm the big one, I'm the master, or whatever. He's not saying that. Yud He, the name Yud He Vav He ties in with this fundamental structure. Anyway, I hope to get into this in more if in future videos. I'm sick right now. I have to recuperate. I've missed. This is the 4th day I've missed. So anyway, I think that about does it. So I'll say goodbye for now.